Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have liftoff.
Today I'm joined by Marcia Kilgore, the serial entrepreneur behind not just one, but multiple iconic brands across beauty, fashion and beyond. Marcia has built and sold businesses all while challenging industry norms whilst making luxury more accessible. So let's find out why she's the lady who launched. Right, before we get into it, if you like this episode, which I know you're going to, please don't forget to like and subscribe and to share it to your group chat. Well, firstly, thanks so much for being here. I am so excited to sit and talk to you. There is so much I want to unpack. And I think what I find so interesting about you is the kind of, you're a bit of a unicorn. You're a bit of a unicorn in the way that you've managed to do something that others hope to do several times.
A few times.
Yeah, but we'll go several because I feel like this is me really putting on a pedestal because I find it so inspiring. So I've got so many questions to ask you. But I like to start each episode in the same way, and that is kind of life before the business, life before the brands, because I really feel like that is so instrumental in shaping us in business and beyond. So talk to me about growing up. What was life like growing up in Canada?
Well, I grew up in between two cities in Canada, and that was really in the 70s, where life was pretty simple. And, in Canada, it's super cold in the winter. You have snow up to your eyeballs, and then you have, beautiful summers. You had 2 television channels. Both were sort of Canadian made. Lots of comedians. Great comedians actually came out of Canada, probably because they were so bored. There was nothing else to do but laugh at everything. But it was pretty difficult as a child with a lot of curiosity to fill my brain with information or things that inspired me. So I grew up in Calgary, and then when my father died, I was about 11, and my mother, who was from Saskatchewan, which was a neighboring province to Alberta, where Calgary is, decided to move back to Saskatchewan because her family was there. Mm-hmm. And it was just easier for her to have, people around that were supportive. Takes a village. So I spent my teenage years in Saskatoon and a tiny little town called Outlook, which was where I was born, 2,000 people, and just finished high school there, sort of struggling to find my crowd, simply because I think a lot of people weren't necessarily that curious about getting out into the world and seeing what else was out there. And I absolutely was.
That is such a sort of tricky period of time. And I think a lot of us find ourselves in that position. I grew up in a relatively small town in Essex. We're close to London, but still it was like a lot of my friends from home or friends that I went to school with are still sort of in that same routine, and it's almost like conforming to, and for them it works and they absolutely love that, but it's the norm is you do this and you might get a job in the city and you take the train there, and then it's about settling down, and then that sort of takes over. And I think if you've got that burning desire to break free from that a little bit and that creative drive takes over, it can be quite isolating, quite lonely. As much as it's like you're full of excitement to find your people when your current people don't have those same goals and that same ambition as you, it's quite a lonely period of time until you find your tribe.
Yes, and when you're a teenager, it's difficult to find other people like you if you're dissatisfied, I suppose, with the status quo.
Yeah.
And teenage girls are also really tough. Huh?
Oh my
gosh.
I
wasn't necessarily one of the popular teenage girls in my school, and I wasn't really interested in being one of those types of teenage girls.
Yes.
So it is hard to find people when you are thinking about bigger things than the cliques and the sort of cattiness. Yeah. And that happens with all teenage girls. It's just that
it does.
It's hormones, and it's not a judgment statement. It's just what happens as you go through this natural development. But I think I skipped it, and then I just couldn't find the people who were on the same wavelength, I suppose, just didn't want to talk about that teenage girl kind of stuff. So I've always had a lot of friends who are much older than me, You know, I'd always
So
I'd relate
interesting.
more to the 30-year-old when I was, 14 than the other 14-year-old.
And do you think that's because you felt mature?
Just had finished that stage already in my thought processes and it wasn't interesting. So I was just trying to find what was interesting. It was usually 15 years ahead in terms of, I guess, intellectual development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. As I said, I'm so interested in your story. And you've disrupted everything from spas to shoes to skincare and everything in between.
Still going.
Well, and I love it. I love it. Disrupting is what we should say. What do you think it was that first sparked your entrepreneurial drive, do you think?
Well, there's a lot of things. When they study entrepreneurs who are serial, usually it's some kind of trauma in their childhood that makes them insecure about being able to pay the rent.
Right.
Yeah, it's like that basic, right?
Yeah.
And so my father died when I was quite young, and he was quite young. And I do remember also when my parents, when I was 8, I remember my parents worrying a lot about paying the bills. And I remember standing in the kitchen once thinking, when I grow up, I am never going to spend time worrying about my electric bill. And it was really like, this is such a waste of life. How is this unfolding in front of me? But I was, 8. But I could already see that that was not the way that I wanted to live when I grew up. So I'm sure that a lot of that insecurity, the financial insecurity, and then the having a parent and the loss of a parent, it's studied, right? This happens. If you look at a lot of people like me, you will find that they've lost a parent very early. So it's kind of textbook, but it does give you a kind of drive where you think no one is ever going to do it for me. I need to do it for myself. And then when you finish doing it, you sort of have to go do it again.
Yeah.
And it's not even, it's sort of this weird innate urge to like, okay, I put some money in the bank, but it might all run out. So I've got to go do it again. And at the same time, I'm a really honest person. So I can't sell anything that I don't want.
Right.
So I can't just go, let me just go invent blah, 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 and just try and hawk it. I have to find something that I think, well, this will really improve a lot of lives. It will help people are going to love this because I love it. And so I've been quite selfish in what I create for a business because
the best things are born that way.
yes,
right?
stuff that you can't find and that you really actually would buy yourself. And I think if you're super honest with yourself, like there's nothing out there like this and there is a real need for it and I would pay for it, right? And I would pay for it every month or every 3 months or however often this thing is used, and you're like brutally honest with yourself about that, then you will have something that other people will want to.
Yes, that's so true. Having grown up in Canada and then eventually landing in New York and London.
Yeah.
How do you think those environments, I suppose, shape your business instincts and like sense of possibility? Because I know there's been different places that I've lived and I did a short stint in Los Angeles and it sort of was cut short because I found out I was pregnant and I just wanted to be home, basically in a nutshell. But that time there really it felt like the land of possibility to me. And it felt, for me, so different to London, the way that I think everyone's little black book is open. And it's not so much of a little black book. It's like, oh, I've got dinner tonight. Oh, you want to do this? You should come along to this. Or you should meet that person. Let me connect you. And it's quite a kind of, it's something that I've always believed, but I don't find, and I'd be interested to hear your side on that, I don't find it happens so much in London. I don't feel like everybody's as open with that. So how have those sort of different places and those different environments shaped you?
Well, that's a really long, probably complicated answer, but let
got
me give it a
time.
go. Let me
We've
give it a go.
got time, girl.
Okay, well,
I'll get
I
my
mean,
tea.
let's just skip Canada, right? Because I was so young when I was there and there was nothing to be connected to. So it wasn't like there were parties or dinner parties or interesting things going on that people would either invite you to or not, because it was like the skating rink.
Yeah.
Right, in the winter, and you would just like go and skate to kill time, or you were going to school. I actually was a bodybuilder, believe it or not, and I know you can see the rock hard abs right now, but they were there at one point. I was so bored when I was a teenager, and my sister started dating this guy whose brother owned a gym, and they took me to the gym, and like Miss Canada middleweight bodybuilding was there, and she said like, I'll teach you. So I killed about 3 years of spare time after school from 15 to 18 training as a bodybuilder.
Oh my gosh.
And that was kind of my tribe, right? It was like, okay, I've finished school. I'm going to go to the gym and work out for 3 hours. And
yeah, but the discipline that comes with that, though.
yes, it was great. It
Yeah.
was, and then, I actually did competitions. I actually like flexed and everything.
No way.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always so fascinated.
Yeah,
by
I wish it was,
bodybuilders.
it's all under this fat.
I think there's zero fat from this.
All that
angle,
muscle
girl.
is still underneath this, but it was really good discipline. You had to
Yeah.
do, when you were doing competitions, you had to diet for 6 months, like egg whites and cod and broccoli and all. And
That's
so
a
as a
different
teenager, to be able to kind of get into that and like really strip it all back and go to school and not cry. I used to cry sometimes in the morning over my 6 egg whites. But it was a really good challenge to see, like, could I do this? Could I get down to like 10% body fat?
Yeah.
And, compete with all these people.
And in that, like, sort of, there's a lot to be said about those years in your life, like you say, 15 to 18.
Yeah.
To be that committed and that disciplined is, I mean, that's a lot of willpower for for that age, right? That's incredible.
I guess so.
Like, when
Like,
you look
for
back
me,
at it in
I guess
hindsight,
I don't
when
know
I think of
because it's
15-year-old
me.
me,
Yeah, you weren't.
well, I know.
Well, yeah, but you might have been somewhere where it was more interesting. You had things to do. Like there really was not. Like Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, is not a place full of options for activities. So, and even television was not. 2 channels, no internet, right? So you found something to do. It was like somewhere to go every day.
Yeah.
And maybe it was a little bit difficult, but I don't shy away from difficult problems or tasks. I find them kind of fun and challenging.
Exactly that. See, that's where it is, though. That's where it is.
Yeah, it's like, oh, let's see how you can kind of tackle this. And then it was like, oh, here's my community. I can go, and they're doing something. So I spent a lot of time doing that. And then when I graduated from high school, my sister was living in New York, and she said, hey, she was a bit lonely because she was working there and no family around. She had a few friends, but no family. And she said, hey, if you can get accepted to Columbia University, I will pay for your tuition. And I thought, well, actually, it was a little bit before I graduated from high school because I remember I had to write the SATs, which were not really a thing for Canadians because nobody from Canada then really went to the U.S. unless they had parents who were American and Canadian, and there was a reason for them to go to the U.S., but otherwise you wouldn't think of it. There wasn't, now if you're in high school and you're a bright student, there's going to be like coaching, there's going to be, here's all the things you're going to study, you got the tutors, but then it was like nothing.
Yeah,
right?
you do you.
You do you. So I somehow looked up or found out where to write this SAT and wrote the SAT without knowing that you were supposed to study for it or prepare or there were any study guides or whatever. Managed to do okay and then got accepted to Columbia. But I went to New York and I, again, didn't have much help. So I didn't realize I needed a student visa. I didn't think, so my sister was going to pay the tuition, but then she had a little financial difficulties that year, some tax things that she wasn't expecting because she hadn't, paid every month. And so I was sort of in New York. I had $300 and I had to do something because I couldn't go to school because she didn't have the money and it was too late for me to apply for a student loan because I was Canadian. So they were only giving out at that point the student loans for the Americans.
Right.
Because I was too late. So I was kind of stranded in New York.
Yeah.
With $300 and a really great body. Yeah. Like,
if you're going to be stuck,
be in a
great body.
like a pair of tights and whatever. So I got a cheap membership at this gym and there were all of these sort of celebrities, directors, film producers, actors, actresses, Jean-Claude Van Damme, his wife, Gladys Portuguese. And so I worked out there and people would approach me and say, can you make my body look like your body? And so, yeah, even men. I wasn't really bulky. I was like an Olympic athlete, kind of looking. So they wanted me to train them. And I said, okay, fine, $35 an hour. And they were like, all right. And, like back in the 90s, that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a few personal training clients and then they would suggest me
Word
to
of
somebody else
mouth.
and somebody else and somebody else. And I thought, okay, this is all right. I can do this and I will just save up until I have enough money to pay for my own tuition. But like $35 an hour isn't that much when tuition even back then was like $2,000 a semester per course at NYU or whatever it was. So I ended up doing a lot of personal training for a couple of years. until I realized, I mean, it was pretty exhausting because you'd have to be up at like 4:00 in the morning to get to your first client by 5:30 because they had to be in Wall Street by 7:30. And then you had a giant break in the middle of the day. And then you had to be up until like 10 o'clock at night, and you were taking the subway all over the place with weights. And like, I mean, it was hardcore. I'm glad I was 19 and 20 when I was doing that because it was super tiring. But I realized at one point, because my skin got very bad, because it was sweaty, and New York's quite humid, and you didn't get time to go home and wash your face, and I'd always had really oily skin, so it got pretty acneic.
Yes.
And one summer, instead of going out to the Hamptons, where if you are a personal trainer and you go to the Hamptons with one of your clients, you are trapped in their house as their toy. Right. So
okay.
You think it's going to be fabulous
because it sounds quite glamorous.
Sounds glamorous when you're 20, but you're basically, a hostage.
Yes.
Yeah, you're a hostage in their house, and they want to
like
show
a
you
service-based job, and
yeah,
you're at their service to a degree.
You're at their service. You're 20. You look pretty good. They like to show you off, but only when they want to take you out and show, here's my personal trainer. So it just wasn't, you would think this is a great thing to do for the summer. It wasn't. I learned after about a week. And then I thought, what can I do this summer? And my skin was terrible. So I took a crash course in how to do facials at this skincare school. And that's kind of how it all started.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then it was like, wait, I can do facials instead of running around town with weights in a backpack at 4 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock at night. And maybe some of this I could do in one location, and it's not physically totally exhausting, because I knew I wouldn't be able to keep up, 8 personal training sessions a day. It was just tough.
You're such a problem solver, aren't you?
God, who else is going to do it?
You are such, as you're speaking, all I hear is problem solver. I had skin, and I think it's almost so.
Well,
it rings true to what you said earlier. When
no one was going to solve my problems for me.
But also that it's something that you're passionate about, and it's something that you feel.
Yes, should be fixed.
That should be fixed, right? And it kind of, it keeps coming back to that. So you're now stumble upon this new career.
Yeah.
And you've got a treatment room.
At a treatment room, yes.
And we're still in New York at this point.
Yes. Spring Street and, what was that, Lafayette? East River Savings Bank building. It looked like an old, when you see movies about private detectives, and they have a room, and they have the door.
Yes.
And the door is like translucent glass, and then there's a number on it. And it says blah, blah, blah agency. I had a door like that.
So cool.
And just like one little room in this building above a subway in Soho.
So when does product come into play?
That was probably about, a couple of stories there. Of course, in fixing my own face and in doing facials. And this, again, that many years ago, I can't even count because it was so long ago, but that many years ago, there wasn't much. Like products in terms of skincare and technology and ingredients were so minimal. Everybody got excited when glycolic acid came out. Like that was a thing, like as if anybody cares, right? Glycolic acid is so, you clean toilets with it, actually, the strong form of it. But it was such a big deal then to know that you could use this form of acid watered down to exfoliate your face. And it was like a miracle. Now, if you look at what you can get now in terms of skincare ingredients, you go to a trade show, there will literally be 2,000 booths with people from all over the place showing their different peptides and stem cells and growth factors. And I mean, it's just such a different game now.
Yeah.
So it was really nascent at that time in terms of what you could get for product, cleansing creams versus they did have papaya and pineapple enzymes and things like that, little glycolic acid, not much else. And I would use what was available from other brands for facials in my studio for my clients, and always be looking for new cool stuff because you should. And it makes it more fun to do your job if you have cool stuff that really works. And so for the first 3 years in my little studio that was like the private detective's office, I just used whatever I could buy. And then I moved to a larger office because I had a waiting list, so I wanted to train other people and then get them coming in for, diffuse it a little bit because it was getting quite
Well,
bad.
that's what happens when you're service-based, right? Everybody wants you, but then you're only one person with one diary.
Yes.
And
Yes.
your own availability. So now you have to kind of
Yeah, you got to
widen
train
the team and make sure everyone's working the way you would.
Exactly.
That.
Which actually was it wasn't easy, but if you are, again, disciplined about it and you choose the right people and you train them in your method and you make sure that you've got the process for that methodology and everybody's using the same product and the experience is the same and the music is great. And, it's those details.
Yes, you're creating that environment and that experience.
Yeah, so everybody was happy. And, I could say hello to everybody who came in for a treatment, whether I could do their treatment or not. I could look at their face and advise if they wanted me to, and then put them on the table with somebody else. So there was an amount of scale that you could kind of reach, even with 4 treatment rooms. And so that was really fun, actually. That little place, it was called Let's Face It.
Oh, I love that.
I love a pun. And it was where people started to come in. So again, there was no internet, right? Back then. So we had booking on computers, no TikTok, no Instagram. There was no way that anyone could find you unless you were written about in a magazine or a newspaper.
Yes.
And somehow I got quite lucky, or I don't know, maybe I deserved it. Who knows? They say luck is, from a lot of practice.
You make your own luck, is what they say. Yes.
But we would get a lot of write-ups in magazines because it was a cool facial place. And prior to that, and actually one of the reasons I got inspired to do facials in a very different way and make it really friendly and fun and modern was because I had saved up enough money to start going to NYU part-time because of the Columbia thing not working out.
Right.
And I lived downtown in the East Village because I had a really cheap apartment. And NYU was actually on my way to the facial studio. So I could go in the evening and take a couple of classes. And I remember taking economics, which I was a disaster at. It was actually the first thing I ever took that I was a disaster at because the science of economics typically doesn't bring the human into it.
Right.
So they'll tell you, well, if the price goes up, the demand will drop. And it's like, well, not always.
It's
like sometimes if something's too cheap, nobody wants it.
Yeah.
And if you just
what crowd you're working
exactly, and I think
sure.
I just did not understand that real basic economics where the human was removed.
Yeah.
The human emotion was totally removed from economics. And so I really didn't do that well in it. And I remember having to study very, very hard for the final exam. And I paid my own hard-earned $35 an hour money for this $2,000 course. So I really wanted to do well to get the credits. And so I'd studied and studied and studying while working 9 hours a day and sweating and running people up and down stairs of their apartments, etc. And I went for a facial. I'd saved up $45 to take myself as a treat for a facial at this place on the Upper East Side that was quite famous. And this was before I did facials.
Okay.
And I had quite bad skin. So this was supposed to be my gift to myself. I had $45 for me at that time was a lot of money.
Deal, of course.
Yeah. I think I even walked uptown to not pay for the subway. So I walked 4 miles uptown to go to this place so I could save the $2 so I could get the facial. And I go in, I lie down. It's a Romanian lady. I'm not going to name the place because I think it still exists. But I'll just protect the non-innocent.
Okay.
And I lie down and she puts the magnifying glass over my face and she leans over me and she goes, "Oh, what a pity."
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. I'm like, well, this is a treat.
Oh God, that is so awful.
It was so awful. And then she actually went out and got Mr. So-and-so, another guy not to be named, probably dead now, because that was a long time ago and he was really cranky and old. Oh. And he came in and he was like, "Oh, shame." It's okay, listen, awful. I'm here for a good time.
I've also worked really hard for this. This was a treat to myself.
Yes, and I remember, so I did then, but on my way home, I was like, screw it. I'm going to pay the $2 for the subway or whatever it was. I went to the 59th Street subway. I remember it rolling in front of me and looking at my blotchy face in the, because it was stainless steel subway. And it rolls in front of me. I have my blotchy face. And I remember looking at my face and thinking, if I ever had a facial place like that and people like me came in, I would never make them feel bad about themselves. And that's when I decided to do facials. because there were a lot of people like me who had problems with their skin because there wasn't the science, right? It was either like benzoyl peroxide or Accutane. If you didn't want to do one of those,
Or what a pity.
yeah, or what a pity.
Yeah.
And then they would steam your face and sell you a bunch of stuff, none of which worked. And it was like, well, that's actually a pity. I just blew even more of my cash that I
That
didn't
sort of
have.
like cream on, cream off facial.
Yeah, that-
kind
yeah,
of
we're
is
not-
just, yeah, come on.
Exactly. So I think that was really when you go back to like the environment that inspired.
Yeah.
They usually whatever inspires a business for me is some moment of insight that there are other people like me who are very disappointed in the current experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was the first one.
yeah.
That was the first one.
I mean, that is every reason to build a business.
Yeah, to make people feel good.
Absolutely
I mean,
that.
people were going for facials. People wanted to be treated and have a moment away from the grind, whatever the grind is. And when they go in for that, they're obviously looking to feel good.
And particularly when you're going in, not even just for a pamper or for a nice experience, but you're going in because of an insecurity.
Yes.
And, you know, everybody knows that like period of time where through my school years, I was always really lucky. And then something happened after babies for me where I had sort of adult acne for a period of time.
Yeah, hormones.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely that. And it knocked me sideways.
Sure.
And it's kind of, it becomes that like burying your head and
Yes.
not wanting to see anybody. And that
Yeah.
the way that it makes you feel is terrible. And when you're going to hope to fix that and somebody makes you
Oh,
feel even worse.
I mean, how basic
And you're also
psychology
paying for
101,
that.
right?
If I,
Yeah.
wanted an insult,
If they were
I've been
paying
doing
me,
that myself all morning.
exactly.
You know, so thank you. Appreciate that.
That could be free.
I want to talk about you obviously living in that service-based world and performing and doing incredibly well and having that kind of ambition to provide a service that makes people feel incredible and really does problem solve again. When I wanted to sort of dig into when Bliss was born.
Right. So it was after I had my 1-room studio, I expanded to the 3-room studio plus a little manicure thing plus a little waxing closet. And that was Let's Face It. And Let's Face It grew and grew and grew.
Best name in the world.
It was not bad. Bliss, kind of better. You always have to
Yeah,
upgrade.
you
You always have to raise your own
yes.
game.
Elevate.
But I did think, like, what do I want it to be called? We're going to do. So I had this 3-room studio plus the waxing closet and the little manicure place. And it was so booked. I mean, and again, this back then, you had an answering machine. Have you ever seen an answering machine? Okay, it was an answering machine with a tape. Like, you didn't have digital answering machines. It actually had this tape. And we would get in the morning, me and the receptionist, Betty, and the tape would be like always to the end because so many people I called and left messages because they wanted to book appointments. And we were already 18 months out for every single room. And it was kind of getting to the point where people were they were getting angry that they'd call and we'd say, yeah, you can come in like 2043. It wasn't that bad, but we were probably then like 1994 and people would be booking appointments for 1997.
Wow.
And
also, like, that's to a point that works because everybody wants something that they can't have, right?
yeah, but not that
But
point.
not
yeah,
to
you
that
kind of
level.
reach like, if you can't get in for 6 months, then people just like, they give up, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of weirdly, you get anger. And then instead of it being great, people are just angry about it. And
Who do they think they are?
yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not, it was just most people would come for their treatment and then they would book every month for the next 18 months.
Of course.
Which is normal because there's, if you know you're free on a Tuesday night at 7:00, that's when you want your facial and
Yeah.
you're just going to book it.
Of
And then you'll
course.
cancel it if you can't make it. But most people wouldn't cancel. They would swap with a friend. So there was never an open one unless somebody was, sick or
Yes.
something like that, in which case we would fill it from our waiting list. But it was few and far between. And I thought, you know what, we need more rooms. Or this, you could kind of see that it was going so well that it would go badly. Kind of like, when everybody wears a particular clothing item and then because everybody's worn it so much, nobody ever wants to see it again. It was kind of the same thing. I could feel it myself.
Right.
This is so good. It is just going to collapse if we don't expand.
Right.
So in the same building that we were in, which was on Prince Street and Broadway by that point, there was an art gallery by a very famous gallerist named Leo Castelli, and he was retiring. He was like the guy in the art world. He had this beautiful gallery with 6,000 square feet. He was upstairs from where we were. And the landlord, who's still the landlord in that building, because I have a beauty bar office in that building now, she said, hey, why don't you take Leo Castelli's gallery, because you could build out, 12 treatment rooms or whatever. And so I signed a lease for that, knowing still at that point, just thinking, how do I build a spa with 12 treatment rooms? I didn't have the money to do it, but I knew that I could make the money by the time I'd have to pay off the contractors.
Right. So it's quite hand to mouth.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, yeah, totally hand to mouth. I mean, I wasn't a business person. Huh? I didn't go to business school. I didn't know about loans. I didn't know you could get investors. I didn't know.
But you saw an opportunity.
Yeah. So I think it would have been very different, but you spend the money very carefully when you don't have any, which is,
Yeah.
I think, the best discipline. It's like, if you have too much money, it's a terrible thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you don't have the discipline of like,
But what does it teach you?
yeah, nothing. It's nothing, right? So I would be literally doing facials all day and then going to Home Depot in Queens in my tiny car to get shelves for the new construction because it was cheaper than asking the contractor to put shelves up.
Yeah.
I had the drill gun. I had the.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
and it was amazing because you just realize you can kind of learn how to do anything. Now it's even easier. Everything's on YouTube, right? So if you don't know how to do something, you're just like, how do
Watch
I
a
follow
video,
and
then
watch video?
we're all an expert.
Yeah. But then it was like, okay, here's a drill gun. And so you're asking some guy in Home Depot in Queens at 3:00 in the morning because they were open all night. Like, how do I make sure that these shelves stay up if there's heavy things on there? And so you kind of did everything, which was great. Now I forgot what the question was. What are we even talking about?
Well, you're saying that you were then expanded, so you take the lease. You're now
and
in the
then
12 rooms.
Yes, and we had, again, an article. So we opened. We had an article then in Vogue about how great it was. And then we were booked for 18 months again. So it was like, oh my God. It took me 2 years after that to build another floor. Because I spent all the money, right? I was sort of paying it off, and you're booked. But like construction, then I think it was about $375,000 worth of construction that we did.
Wow.
And that's like 1996. And I didn't have it. I was like, yeah, I had enough. I was not making nothing, but I was making what you would make if you had a 3-room facial studio, right? And we didn't charge a lot. And so every cent I had went to the contractor.
business.
Yeah, who was really great, actually. His name was Marvin, I remember. And he was like, well, I can probably stall these guys for, like, the fact that he was even doing this job when he knew that I didn't actually have the money, but I would get it, was kind of cool.
The trust he had in
Yeah,
you.
it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so we got this fantastic article in Vogue. Thank you, Vogue. And they, wrote about us. The phone rang off the hook. We actually had to take the ringer off the phone because it was a spa, and you can't have like phones ringing all the time. So we took the ring off and we just had it flashing, and it was just like phone booking, phone booking, phone booking. And then we were booked for 18 months, and I had to start saving again. Wow. Yeah, so that was really right place, right time, right idea. Because there was nothing that was modern in the spa world. Everything was like old school, Eastern European, hit you with twigs, steam your face, shame you. And we were coming in with like, hey, come in for a triple oxygen facial and a hot milk pedicure. And everybody was like, ah.
Yes.
So yeah, it was super fun actually. I met so many people also. It was like a social club, that place. It was like everybody came, right? You name it, they came in. And we did not favor anybody over anybody else. So if Hillary Clinton called, she had to go on the waiting list like anybody else.
Love it.
Although sometimes
be.
for people who were kind of high profile, we'd come in early. Like I'd come in at 7:30 in the morning if they would, because it opened at 9. So if they'd come in early, I would come in early to accommodate somebody who didn't necessarily want to be around crowds. Like if you had like, Uma Thurman or somebody like that, you probably didn't want her in the locker room with everybody else.
Yes.
Yes. So you might accommodate that. But you'd never cancel somebody normal just because Calvin Klein wanted to come in.
Yes. Yeah.
It was all, everybody was equal.
I love that.
It was
that,
great.
and that is so, so important.
Yeah.
So then this is now flying.
Yeah.
And then you decide I'm not going to use these other products. We can produce our own
Yes.
products.
Yes. Well, I still need a lot of other products because you know how it is. Production of formulations is complicated, and especially when you're using them for treatments, you need stuff that actually does very specific things.
Yes.
So I did use a lot of professional products from a lot of different brands, and we mixed and matched and created our own.
But then I suppose
treatments.
Bliss became that takeaway that you could
Yes.
feel like you've got this wait list. Everybody wants into
You
this
want a piece
club,
of it so you can buy
but
the
you
product.
want a piece at home.
Yes.
But that's kind of genius when you've got a wait list like you do,
Yes.
and not everyone can be involved, but people want it to be accessible.
Yeah.
Then they can take a slice of that home.
Well, in 1996, again, no websites, right? There were no websites.
Yeah.
You had the internet by then because you could search for packaging suppliers, but it was very like business to business.
Right.
Right. So I could search for contract manufacturers. I could search for packaging suppliers, but there was nothing like, you can't go online.
It was not
Back
very
then. It was
sophisticated.
mail order
Yeah.
catalog.
Yeah.
And so after the article in Vogue, it was actually about a particular cream that we sold. And then we had one about the spa. But the cream, people started calling to buy this cream from this one article. And they were still calling after like 4 or 5 months. And I would say that article basically was like the house that built Bliss. It was like the article that we made enough money on to pay off the contractor by November when we opened in July. And from that, we must have shipped out, 10,000, 20,000 jars of that cream.
Wow.
Now, interestingly, people would then call us, and of course, no email, right? It was like so much phone. And they'd call and say, what else do you have? I love this cream. What else do you have? So I decided, just out of the blue, to create a mail order catalog that was the Bliss Out catalog. And so I had one client who came for facials who was a still life photographer, very talented. He decided he would do the still life photography. I had one client who was an illustrator, so anything that we actually didn't have a physical sample of because it wasn't produced yet, she would draw it. And then we would have it ready by the time the catalog came in and was as mailed out. And then I wrote the copy for it because who can't? I was like,
I'll do that.
yeah, I'm like, anybody can write copy. And so we created this really cute little catalog called Bliss Out. And it went out from Bliss. And we gave it to all of our clients. And then we also got mailing lists. And we sent it to everybody who had ordered from us this cream from Vogue. And we created this enormous mail order catalog business all about beauty products. It had beauty products, but also would have one of my clients was a woman named Temple St. Clair Carr. She put earrings. She was bought by Tiffany at one point, but we took a pair of her $500 earrings and put those in the catalog. And then Kate Spade, God rest her soul, we put a Kate Spade bag in the catalog. Wow. She did a special bag for us that was like a messenger bag.
Incredible.
Yeah, because it was Bliss was so hot. We had all the hot people coming in, right?
You're a tastemaker.
Yeah, and all the tastemakers came to us. So, and they all had facials. So I could ask anybody hey, we're doing a catalog. It wasn't so, back then it wasn't brands were not so precious.
Yeah.
And Bliss was so hot. I had Thomas Keller from the French Laundry come and ask if I would open a Bliss at the French Laundry, which is that amazing restaurant in Napa Valley. So we were the hottest thing out there. Anybody would do anything for us. So we had this catalog. It was beauty products and then random other things that I liked. And so we sent it out. Had no idea how to send out a big mailer catalog. And we sent out probably 100,000 copies. It wasn't small.
Goodness.
And that also then built this product business. But again, it was just sort of fun. It was why not? Let's do it. Let's do it. People want to see what we have. Let's send it out there. And let's make a catalog that's super fun, fun to read. It was, you're really young. You won't remember some of these references, but there was a catalog in the 90s called J. Peterman, which if you've ever watched Seinfeld, Elaine, the character, works for J. Peterman on Seinfeld.
Okay.
But J. Peterman was an actual catalog, and they had the world's best copywriter. And they actually hand drew everything in the catalog. And then they write this narrative paragraph about each product that kind of had nothing to do with the product. It just made you want the product. It was so magical. And I got very inspired by that catalog. Somehow was on the mailing list for it. So I tried to write copy that was kind of like the J. Peterman catalog copy.
Like a similar tone of voice.
Yeah, but a little bit cheekier, I guess you would say, a little edgier. It was very, dreamy, world traveler, snobby
Right,
man.
got it.
Mine was sort of more like,
Playful.
yeah, edgy girl,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it did very well. We grew that business. I remember the first day, like in 1999, the first day that we did $100,000 in a day from the catalog, just because the mixture of the products was so great and we had built up the clientele. And it was like a nice business.
Being such a people brand from the get-go
Yeah.
and having that FaceTime with people literally, and then the product spiraling, you've had like the best focus group from the off, which is a kind of incredible thing to have. And now you see, like, fast forward to 2025, you see people doing that in terms of building a community, and that's now an
Yes.
online community, but you kind of had that in the flesh and the bare bones of it that then grew, which is kind of incredible. And I guess it's, without knowing it at the time, it's a strategy that now people use, but in a completely different way.
Yeah, I think it's very different, though. I think online communities are very different than in person chatting with somebody, especially if
But
you've
now
got
it
them.
sort of has to be that because the world has moved in that way, I suppose.
Yes. I'm always shocked that if people never think to pick up the phone and call a customer. It's like, just call them and ask them,
Yeah.
right? Instead of hypothesizing or saying, well, we had 10,000 people in this community and like 47 of them said this. Community, there's that pack mentality where something happens in community and people like dive on it.
Yeah.
And
one person can say something and it kind of
it turns into
through.
like this huge thing. And then people believe it. And it's like, actually, that might not really be what they're thinking, but it might be what they want to portray in the community. And also people are very anonymous out there.
Yeah.
So they can act very differently.
And hide behind quite a lot now.
Yeah, you can be really rude out there.
I think you could be really rude at those streets and,
yes,
and
it
hide
doesn't,
behind something, and it's something that
it doesn't affect you.
Pass the person in the flesh, they
you
never
would never,
say it.
you would
Exactly
never,
that,
yeah.
exactly. That gives you a level of security now for the bad. I want to talk about, for me, what sets you apart from other entrepreneurs that I've spoken to is the success that you've had multiple times. And as I said at the start, that I feel like you're somewhat of a unicorn. And you've built and exited companies with Bliss and then Soap and Glory, which to me is just incredible. What are the common traits and principles that have sort of guided each brand's growth? Because with Bliss, it really feels that you're front and center, you're there, you're on the ground, it's sort of scaling in front of your eyes. And with Bliss, it didn't seem, well, for me listening and on being on the outside, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's sort of, everything evolved and it was happening sort of in real time rather than it being such a considered strategy. It was kind of happening and sort of snowballing, and people were getting it. People were buying what you were selling.
Yeah.
Soap and Glory, was that kind of the same premise? Talk me through Soap and Glory.
Well, Soap and Glory. So after I sold Bliss, the investors, the second set of investors, so we sold Bliss to LVMH in 1999, the majority of it, and I kept part of it because I still wanted to be involved. And we made a deal that I would be involved for at least 5 years. And then September 11th happened, and LVMH really changed their strategy to eliminate any non-core business, and their core business really was Louis Vuitton handbags, which are made of canvas covered in plastic, and so very high margin business, and that's what they wanted to focus on because everything else was super difficult financially for them at the time. So they decided to divest of their shares in Bliss to W Hotel Group, which isn't a bad thing because W Hotel Group, it was Starwood Hotel Group, and we were going to be the spa that went into all the W hotels.
Right.
And, okay, good idea. If you're at a W hotel and you can go to a Bliss, great. The person that was then brought in from the W Hotel Group and put in place as sort of the CEO of Bliss was not as experienced as I was in running a business of that sort.
Right.
However, was not also at the time open to suggestion, let's say. And so it was sort of uncomfortable for me. After a while, I felt like I was the professor. I'd have to make these long diatribes about how they were doing it was like not going to work. And I spent more time every day trying to teach him why and back up my point of view.
Almost convincing.
Yeah, which was like, this is not a good use of my time. I am a very experienced and,
And this has been your baby, to labour the point.
It was very successful under my watch.
Yes.
Therefore, one might think, hey, let's take this advice for free. And let's run with it because, free. But
She kind of knows how this works.
one would think that this would be a thought process, but it's often not. And people have lots of ego and often think they can just come in and they're smarter, better, just whatever.
More qualified, or however they see
Even
fit.
if they're 22 years old and just came out of Harvard. And I get that there's smart people at Harvard, but it doesn't mean they know your business. And said person has gone on to do fantastic things in a totally different area.
Space.
Yeah, and it was a very smart person, but not at that. It didn't do.
Yes.
But I couldn't waste 5 years at that. So I love cosmetics. I love actually making people feel good. Right? It's like, how can we? I think as a kid, when I was a teenager, I was left out, right? Because I was sort of the odd bird out in that I just didn't fit in. But I did. Of course, you want to fit in. So I've always done things where people are included, and I want people to fit in and feel like welcome.
Yes.
So whatever brand it is, it's the culture, right? So Bliss was that. It was like, hey, come in. It's fun here. Everybody's the same. We treat everybody the same. Whether you're, working as an assistant in some company around the corner, or you're Uma Thurman, you're waiting for your appointment. Whoever you are, you got to wait. We treat everyone equally, and I thought that was really important. I wanted everyone to feel welcome and kind of involved and happy and entertained, and like a brand should be entertaining.
Yeah.
You have to make it something that they feel like they want to talk about, even if it's a product that they're buying. And so I was out of Bliss. So I did my 5 years, and then I had to leave just for my own mental sanity. And then I thought, well, what can I do? I had one little child at the time. We were living in London because we had opened a Bliss here. And I thought, let me just do a product range, because actually somebody from Estee Lauder at the time had advised me. He said, never do a service business. And of course, I was in the middle of a service business. Bliss. He was like, forget it. Just go to products. It's way easier. It's way better, blah, blah, blah. And of course, at the time, I had Bliss products. We had launched Bliss products and a couple of other product ranges that were more skincare-y at the time. So I then knew the product industry as well. And so I thought, you know what? Let me just create something that's sort of on trend here in England. That's sort of what was the vibe at that time. H&M had started to do collaborations.
Yeah.
It was just then where they were doing like high-end stuff for low-end prices. And I thought with Soap and Glory, I thought, let me do like really amazing formulas with really great design. They weren't expensive formulas, right? They were created with such care and attention that they felt expensive.
Bringing that premium to the high street.
Yeah. And at least there was a premium feel. You would not have stem cells or peptides or any expensive ingredients in there. But when you would use it, it smelled amazing. It felt amazing. So, you could afford it. And it was all fun. So you'd walk in, it was like a wall of pink. All the products were named funny things you'd have in your bag. People gave them as gifts.
It's
it was
so
like
distinctive.
It was.
It's that's one thing that I really feel about Soap and Glory. It's so distinctive, and there's lots of brands that have kind of
copied it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say
sure.
use it as heavy
Inspired.
inspo.
Yeah.
But
That's all right.
There's a lot of brands that have actually taken that Soap and Glory thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that I really, when I think about you and the brands that you have built, FitFlop, let's
Yeah.
they are so. They're so clear on what they are and the concept, and they're so kind of innovative, and like, to me, I'm like, I love it. I love the pivots, and I love the strands of you. How do we go from from bodybuilder to Bliss to Soap and Glory to FitFlop.
Well, you see the bodybuilder thing in the FitFlop, right?
No. Now I know the story.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yes.
But the different avenue stream, I just love it. I love it so much. Honestly, I really, really do.
There's just a lot out there, right? There's a lot of stuff if you connect the dots in a different way.
Yeah.
If you're curious and you're not just thinking about what you do, but you think about what everybody else is doing, right? And there's a great book actually by, I'm trying to remember who's by, Adam Grant, called Originals, where he actually analyzes entrepreneurs that have done several businesses.
Yes.
And he, it's sort of chapter after chapter about, I found this was the same about all of them, this was the same about all of them, this was the same about all of them, etc. And one thing that he says is most of them are experts in a field, right? So whether it's skincare, I'm an expert in skincare. I'm also relatively, at that point, was an expert in exercise science. So these are my two expertises. But I also will read anything, right? So I will read about ball bearings. Like if that's in front of me, I'll read it. I'll read any newsletter that comes my way. I'm like, just because you don't know what piece of information from some other random thing is going to give you an idea. It's how you connect the
value.
dots. Yeah, but if people are just connecting the dots here, well, those dots have been connected already. So to come up with a new idea, you have to think about, well, like FitFlop was, I bought, first of all, I was so busy with Soap and Glory, and I thought I was going to get back in shape, and I had a small child, and I always thought this, I was probably, 35. My goal was, I'm going to get back into the shape that I was in when I was a bodybuilder, right? Fat chance. I have a job. Soap and Glory is taking over the world. I'm never going to get time to exercise. The only time I have to do anything good for my body is when I'm walking my kid to school, right? And he was 2.
The commute.
Yeah, the commute to his little Montessori thing. And I remember buying this pair of Ann Demeulemeister, really beautiful flats, looking comfortable, right, at Barney's for $600 or whatever they were. And I grabbed my kid and we were walking to Montessori school and they wouldn't stay on my feet. Literally, however I adjusted them, my feet were coming out the back. And it was like, okay, there has got to be a way that we can make a shoe that is good for your body, that is comfortable, and you can actually walk period of time in. This was, of course, before it was okay to wear trainers with your suit and whatever, people. And I started to just think about how footwear could be the next beauty product, right? People are often so uncomfortable because their shoes are killing them, right? It ruins your day.
Oh, your whole day.
You go out in a bad pair of shoes for an evening, and it's like it messes up your whole evening. And I just thought, there's got to be a way that we can kind of work around this, that we can get some cute shoes that actually are good for your body when you walk in them. And knowing about what I knew from bodybuilding, right? There were, people would say, weight the shoes, but you can't put weights in shoes because it wrecks your knees, right? Or, do this to the shoe or do that. And I knew everything about physiology and anatomy. I didn't know anything about shoes yet. So it was like, okay, how can I learn about shoes and put it together, physiology and anatomy? Because people weren't doing that then. I even spoke to many universities, and maybe Nike was making runners, right? With the... But people weren't measuring the biomechanics of how a shoe affects your body. So I didn't even know the word biomechanics. When I was interviewing shoe designers to help me design this shoe, they just said, I would explain what I wanted the shoe to do while you walked in it. And they would look at me with their, eyes kind of I'm just a shoe designer. I draw
I don't know the science.
Shoes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it took actually a dean of the University of Swansea, randomly had invented intense pulse light laser hair removal, came to me to try and help create some post-treatment products.
Right.
And then at the end of our meeting, I said, could you help me? I'm trying to find someone, maybe I'm trying to find someone who can help me design a shoe that does X, Y, and Z for your body, aligns your spine, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, you need to come up to Swansea and speak with our biomechanics department. And I was like, okay, biomechanics. That's what I need. I need a biomechanist. I didn't know the word, right?
Yeah.
So then I spent the next 6 months looking because I went to Swansea. That's another story. They didn't know how to make something. They knew how to measure something.
Right.
So I had to look for someone.
So you're having to collectively find the right team to bring
Oh yeah, no one knew. I mean, this
No.
is like a total idea out of nowhere.
It was
that-
complete innovation.
Yeah, you got to find someone who is like, but how do we do it? How do we do it? And then finally, someone who was working on packaging for Soap and Glory, Christmas products, emailed me and said, I think I found a biomechanics department at London South Bank University. Why don't you go talk to them? This is a great thing. You'll love this because you're a woman. So I show up and we have, I made them sign an NDA. And I talked to the guys in the biomechanics department. And then there was a guy named Pat Fox, since no longer there, so I can tell you this story. I think he's in Australia. He'll never hear this.
Fabulous.
Right.
Love it.
And we signed the NDA, blah, blah, blah. And then, he takes me to the cafeteria where we can talk about the idea and, commercialization, how they're going to maybe help build a product for me or help at least build a prototype. And he goes, who's behind this? Couldn't possibly be me. But you get that a lot, right? And I was
Well,
like,
you, Pat.
I said, I can't say.
It's just wild.
It's okay, but I managed to get the IP out of them for $5,000.
Stop.
But I still, if we ever sell, I've got Dr. Dave and Darren in my will. So I will not forget Dr. Dave and Darren when this comes, into a big number. But it's just, you always underestimate it.
And it's just like,
It was like, come on, man, I'm on my third one by now. Like,
This is water off a duck's back. I know how this works, but it's
that
crazy,
was okay.
isn't
It was okay. It was kind of great. I guess maybe he didn't know what to look for. So I don't know. Whatever.
And do you know what? Sometimes he's not the person that you need to get it right. No.
As long as you give me that prototype.
If
the
Pat
first
doesn't get it, it's
prototype
okay. Pat's
looked
not
like a
buying
big. It was like a big black lump of coal, but it was foam. And they told me they actually made shoes. So I waited like 3 months for that prototype because they're like, no, we have a shoe creation department. And so I'm like, okay, I can wait. You guys make the shoe.
Yeah.
Right? They show up. It's literally a rectangle of black foam with ropes to tie it onto the foot. I'm like, look, I don't care what that does for the body. No one is wearing that.
That's not cute.
They wouldn't even wear that thing inside their own house. So then I had to, but it worked when we
and also, you're
electroded
right, Pat.
somebody
Who
up.
is buying this?
Yeah, nobody was buying that. But the technology was in it, and the technology was doing what we needed it to do because they electrode up your entire body, and then they can see if it's doing what it's supposed to do as you
Right.
walk in, even if it was ropes tied onto your foot.
So now it's the job to make it cute.
Well, I had to then find a footwear manufacturer, right? But you can't take this to like one of the big ones; they'll just steal it. That happens.
Yeah.
So in the annals of my mind, I had remembered going out to Trowbridge. Is that a place? Trowbridge, I think so. And having a meeting with a contract manufacturer back then who was making a product called Sexy Mother Pucker for Soap and Glory, which was a lip plumper, and them giving me their corporate history for like an hour and a half. Which you don't do in North America. Like you go and you're like, hey, we want to make lip gloss. And they're like, great, we make lip gloss. When you come to England, they're like, here's our...
Have a cup of tea.
Yes,
Let's
and here's
tell
our
you about
corporate
us.
history. And I remember being like, oh my God.
Okay, cool. Can we do this?
Yes,
or not?
can we just get that? And I remember at one point they said, well, we are this company and we have a sister company that sources shoes from Asia for M&S. And I remember I was like, wait, I know someone who makes shoes. I know someone. And I was like, okay. They make shoes. And so I reached out to them and I was like, do you think you could help me make a shoe? And then I used a graphic designer who I'd been working with for Soap and Glory. They did the original packaging for Soap and Glory. They were so talented. They could do anything. So I was like, can you draw me a really cool little athletic flip-flop with a chunky sole, right? And so she gave me a whole bunch of drawings. They were really cute. And then I sent it to the guy at this, we NDA'd with this guy who worked for this sister company of the lip gloss people. And he created the first one. And we sold millions of pairs.
I just FitFlop is such a household name that it's just incredible that, I know everything is born from somewhere, but that was your brainchild because your shoes were annoying you taking your son to nursery.
Yeah.
I just love it. I love it. And what I love about you is the way that you continue to disrupt industries. It's a skill set. It's your, everyone's born to find their thing. And it goes back to you being in Canada and you need to find your tribe. Well, you kind of are not just finding, you're creating, and you're
Oh, if it's not there,
exactly
you
that.
gotta make it. You got to
but
make
it goes back to that, and you're doing it time and time again. I mean, normally when we do these interviews, we're like, okay, and that's when that was born, and that's a great, okay. Now we're in beauty pie season.
Yes.
Because guess what, girl? You've done it again.
Yeah.
Of all the brands you have built, for me, Beauty Pie and FitFlop are the ones that really feel, Beauty Pie, as I'm reading notes here, often described as a revolution. Now, this isn't just a brand of product, it's a model.
Yeah.
And the Beauty Pie model, you're building that model out, which at the time is a bold move in quite a traditional market.
Yes.
So tell me where this idea was then born. And I'm quite interested in how you kind of test and validate that idea before going all in.
That wasn't possible.
Okay.
Normally, and I love Jim Collins. If you've ever read any Jim Collins books, he's like the master of business kind of research and books. And he always, one of my favorite quotes from him is, "You should always fire a bullet before you fire a cannonball." Like, don't put your life savings into something. Just put a small amount and see if it works. If you can, but some things you can't.
Yeah.
And Beauty Pie was one of those ones where it wasn't my life savings, but there was a substantial initial investment because there were a lot of risks. This one was probably the riskiest one. I mean, okay, FitFlop, you had to make 30,000 shoes, right? So I had to buy 30,000 shoes as a minimum order quantity to launch FitFlop because
And that's a big MOQ.
it's decent size MOQ, and shoes are not cheap, and especially triple density midsoles, and you're making the molds, et cetera, et cetera. But it was, like maybe $1 million, which isn't. Beauty Pie was a lot more. That you had to put a lot more in and like leap off a cliff simply because of the disruptive nature of it,
Right.
and the fact that the whole idea is that we are sourcing from the same luxury quality factories that all of the premium luxury skincare, cosmetics, brands, hair care, fragrance, candles, all of them use. I knew from my many lives in the beauty industry, and of course, this one came out of a need again, right? I had sold Soap and Glory. When you're the owner of a brand, all of these labs from around the world are trying to get you to manufacture with them, especially when you're the owner of a big brand who's doing volume. So Soap and Glory did a lot of volume. Everybody would send me boxes of their product all the time.
And how much volume are we talking? Like,
Soap and Glory was probably doing like 100 million pounds. Yeah, I mean, it was volume. And then at Christmas, my God,
Well,
those
that's when-
big Christmas bags, those crashed the Boots website.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew it was big when we crashed the Boots
I
website.
have a baby toiletry brand that's,
Yes,
that's
I know,
in
it's
Boots, and I
beautiful.
know that
It's hard
Soap and
to-
Glory changed the Christmas gifting model.
Yes, we did. Yeah. And they kept wanting to. It was funny because I remember having this conversation with Ken. I can't remember his last name, which is terrible. He's at Tesco now. But he always
just call
wanted
him Ken.
He always wanted to do more, and I was like, "No, Ken, this is as big as it gets at Christmas. If you do more, you're just going to be stuck with you do too much. People don't want it anymore. You always have to have it sell out. If
Yeah.
it sells out and there's none left by 5, day 6 and 7, that's good. The last thing you want is for it to be hanging around day, because it's a 7-day thing, that Christmas
Yes, of
bag.
course. We don't want it there on the 3rd of Jan.
Yeah, but they just want always more and more. And I know when to say, that's enough. We should be happy with this, right? You want it to last 10 more years? Do this. You blow it out too much more, it's going to last 2 more years. Which one? 10 years of this or 2 years of this? And they, people just don't get it. There is a balance where you don't get too greedy. Be really happy that this is crashing your website every Christmas and people are rushing into the stores to get this thing. So I had sold it. Boots actually bought it, Soap and Glory. And they really wanted to do something very different with it. And they were our biggest vendor, and there was a lot of pressure from them because they were our biggest retailer. And it's a machine over there, and they really don't care about the individual brands, even if it is $100 million brand. They just want to do what they want to do and apply their Boots thing to it. And after a while, that's not very fun. And I'm not that kind of, I like to go build stuff. I don't want to spend my time arguing with buyers in Nottingham. So It's not inspiring. No offense. I mean, they do. You know what I mean? I'm sure you do. So I just thought, let me just do something different. And when I had Soap and Glory, like literally boxes, it's like Christmas every day. Boxes would arrive from Switzerland. Boxes of product arrive from Italy. Boxes would arrive from Japan, from all these third-party labs that produce, for the deluxe brands, because they would want you to use some of their products for Soap and Glory, because you start with a chassis from one of these places and then you can custom make it. Sometimes some of the stuff they have is just amazing. Like all the best eyeshadow crayons are from the same lab in Italy. They sell them to all the premium brands. It's the same eyeshadow crayon, maybe in a different pack, but it's the same exact thing. So I can buy it, right? And so they send stuff all the time. So my bathroom was always full of stuff. Of course, I sold Soap and Glory, so I wasn't getting the stuff anymore. I also, and the stuff is like basically free, but in premium cosmetics, the markup. So eyeshadow pencil that might cost £3 from the lab, finished in its beautiful packaging, and is going to sell for 36, right? That's premium cosmetics. So the nice stuff, you're just getting milked if you're a customer. But you need it, because by the time you pay your salespeople and you're this and you're that and you're that, right? And then Boots takes a huge
margin.
Huge amount of the margin. So that's the customer pays so much more than they have to. I knew this, right? But there was kind of no way around it. And for skincare, my God, like premium skincare, $100 cream or £100 cream is like $5, maybe costs $8 to make.
It's so crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy, but
and when you
can't.
You shop in a completely different way.
You totally do. But the $8 cream, the one that costs $100, is way better than the one that costs $20, because the one that costs $20, it probably costs $1.50 to make, and there's nothing in it. So but you're still just getting raked over the coals. And I remember, I knew this, of course. I still had some leftover stuff. I would still actually use some of the Soap and Glory skincare, was really good. So I would still, buy that. But rarely would I buy a really high performance product, because I was like, I just can't do it. And I was actually on my way to Shenzhen to do a FitFlop collection with the team. Forgot my moisturizer in China in October, November, December. They often don't heat the hotels or the factories. You wear like a puffer jacket and you're just a bit cold. And that's kind of how it is. And I was going for 2 weeks to Shenzhen, and then I was going to go to Cosmoprof Asia for a week and in Hong Kong. And I had forgotten my moisturizer. So I forgot my toiletries. Got to Hong Kong, went into a duty-free shop. Went over to I'm not telling you which aisle, but it was like a brand that I sort of know and trust, Asian,
Right.
Good quality. And I had a friend who used to work at it and used to give me free stuff. And so I knew one particular cream I liked it. And I went to buy it, and it was like $250. And I didn't have cream. I could afford it if I wanted to pay for it. And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't pay $250 for a product that costs $5. I know that it didn't cost more than $10. And I went without moisturizer for a couple of weeks, because I just thought, I'm not buying that. And then I thought, why should anybody be buying this? This is a total racket.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be empowering women. And what are we doing? We're not empowering women. We're like picking their pockets. This is not all right. And then I got invited to, so one of the big labs in Italy, which mainly makes cosmetics, they have this open day for all the brands. And it happens around Cosmoprof Bologna, which is like April, I think, or May of every year. And they'll invite you if you have a brand. And it's sort of like a buffet. You go, you sit in a room, and then they bring you these boxes of all the beautiful formulas that they've been working on that year. And when you look at the hallway, it's like your brand and then the next brand. You see all the brands that if you walk through Selfridges, it would be the same thing, right? Laura Mercier, Tom Ford, blah, 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 blah. They're just little signs outside each cubicle. And then you're in one of them. And they're showing everybody the same stuff, right? And so they were really kind. I think they knew, like, well, she finished that one, but I'm sure she's going to start another one. So let's invite her, right?
Yeah.
So they were kind enough to invite me to this, like, beauty event. And I left with this bag of stuff, free stuff, like the swag. It's not the swag, it's the samples. And then I was in the Milan train station, walked through a Sephora, saw basically everything that was in my bag that had been pre-launched by, like, Marc Jacobs Beauty or, like, whoever. And I just thought, the street value of the cosmetics in this bag over my shoulder is like $5,000. And then I thought, how great would it be if I could bring all my friends to a beauty event? They would love it. And then I thought, can you imagine if we could set something up so we can get this stuff, stick it in a warehouse, and all the women who love, and men, lots of men actually at Beauty Pie, who love good skincare and love great makeup and love, could just shop out of the warehouse and not have to worry about paying these crazy, retailer markups.
When they're getting the same thing.
Yeah. So it's all about getting a bigger piece of the beauty pie.
So good. It's just so, it's genius. And it goes back to that, opening up your little black book and,
knowing the people.
telling, connecting people and saying, I know these people. They make it, what you do on a human level, but bringing that to
everybody,
the mainstream.
Yeah.
It's just and how that wasn't thought of before is kind of mind-blowing.
Well, so we were a little worried because, if this lab, for instance, is selling us the same product that it's selling to brand X, and brand X does X 100,000 units of it a year, we didn't know if they'd want to manufacture for us if we were going to list this product at a third or a quarter of the price.
Right.
And so we didn't tell anybody what we were doing until the day before it came out in Vogue. So we had to, because, what if they said no? By that point, we had placed purchase orders with them.
Right.
They had delivered. We were actually a good
Yes.
customer. And we had our warehouse full. And, right? So I literally took that train back out the day before the Vogue article came out and took the owner of the factory and his marketing people and the president, blah, 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 through a presentation about why this was the future. It was 70 pages of a PowerPoint. I don't really do PowerPoint. But I remember thinking, I've got to walk these guys through it like spoon by spoon by spoon, right? Because they're going to freak out. They are going to freak out because, Estee Lauder has this product and they're selling it for $49 and I'm going to sell it for $14.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to show everybody how that 14 is broken down into our costs of operating the business.
Transparent. And that's
totally the
brands
antithesis.
don't like to be transparent.
Not in beauty.
In beauty,
Yeah.
exactly that.
So I remember presenting it, and at the end, I was like, the final reveal, and there was a little shell shock, right? One woman did a little freaking out because she was like, oh my God, we've charged you less for this product than we charged Bobbi Brown, because I think we placed a slightly larger order.
Right.
So she was, having a small panic attack. And the gentleman who owns the place, who's sort of an icon in the industry, said, wow, I thought you were just going to come in and show us purple packaging. Because he said, most people come in and they're like, oh, look at this packaging. Isn't it great? And that's their thing, right?
Yeah.
And then there was one other guy who actually hugged me, which was very interesting because he was French and he got so excited. He was hugging me. And I didn't expect that from these very strict, but he was excited. He was like, we've never seen anything new for 40 years, but this is actually a new way to distribute cosmetics.
This is a completely new concept.
Yeah. So that was a relief. Then I sent my then CEO on the road to do all the other smaller labs that weren't quite as important as that one.
Yeah.
With my PowerPoint.
And I mean, instantly, as a consumer and as a marketer's dream.
Yes.
Over here. You like to feel like the industry secrets.
Yeah, of course.
And you love to feel like well, that's the same, that's the same factory that make this, but you like to feel like you're getting
a deal,
but
and you're
also
on the inside.
inside scoop.
Of course.
And the sort of it's genius to bring that to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the thing that gets shared in a group chat. And that's where you really see that this landed on social media. Because people love a dupe, or they love a kind of
a thing they can't have, a thing they couldn't normally get to.
Absolutely that.
Yeah. And there was really no reason except for setting up the infrastructure of it that no one had done it before, And
I actually didn't, when you broke down the name and you're getting a piece of the beauty pie.
Bigger piece of the beauty pie.
It's just genius.
And we used to say, like, other brands cut you out, we cut you in. Right?
I just love it. Everything about it I love.
It all makes sense, though. It's like so obvious. When you look at it, it's like, it's so obvious.
And before I could talk to you all day long. It could get too long. Before I move, no, never. I've loved every second of this. Before I move on to our rocket round, I want to ask you, building brands and selling certain brands, and because you've done it multiple times and your story looks different, Beauty Pie's still yours, as is FitFlop. You sold Bliss and you sold Soap and Glory. The feelings, because I sit down with a lot of founders and some people might be starting out their journey. You know, I've sat down with lots of different people, from Jo Malone, who has sold and, sold her name and then
that's
built.
A tough one when you sell your name. Which is a tough
one, and built again. And, I love to look at kind of the different stages and different routes that female founders take. For you, you've kind of done a little bit of everything and had a bite at kind of all those cherries, which I love. Where is that difference to you, knowing that it's time to sort of exit a brand and sort of know that you've built something and that now is the ceiling for you and you've taken it to where you think you can, but actually keeping hold of something and staying there? How do you define that, and how do you know when the time is right?
I'm pretty stoic about difficult times, and can generally put up with quite a lot when something seems to either be really repetitive and not necessarily mentally intriguing. So sometimes things just are more of the same.
Right.
And so for me, if it's not interesting anymore, because it's just more of the same, and I feel like, wait, I've laid down the foundation here, people can follow it. If there's not that many additional places to go with it, I could tend to get a little bit bored after a while. And then I would think, you know what? I've laid down the blueprint here. People can do this. I don't need to be the one doing this.
And you feel a little bit like you're not in this as much as you once were.
Yeah, well, it's not even like I'm 100%, right? I want everything to be great. I want it, if I'm still even there at all, I'm going to make it great. But when I start to think, well, the skill set that I have is not required here anymore.
Right.
Which is a special skill set. It's building it, right? And refining it and identifying it and making people love it. And the enthusiasm that is a bit contagious, that makes other people want it and love it and all of that. If we're sort of beyond that and it's, the only way we're going to grow it right now is to launch another 3 products. And, anyone can do that. I will have taught my team. I'm all about let's build a process and I'll show you how to do this. And then if they can do it themselves, I could hold on to it. But if there's not that much that I can do to help, then I can get a little bored. Because I love to see also the people who are in the business grow and learn to do those things. And if they can, I don't need to be doing it.
But it's a great mindset to have, because lots of people would say, but that's my baby and I've bought that, and the thought of walking away, I don't think I could ever do that. So I think it's a really refreshing mindset to have. Like, I've taught everybody everything I know, and this skill set is actually better lent going again.
Yeah.
In your case.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Yeah. I think I'm more like a $0 to $200 million person. And then it's like, I don't know, the corporate stuff and the politics and all of that. I'm like, oh, no way, man.
Tapping out.
No.
Tapping out.
It's not my game.
I love it. Honestly, it's so, everything you've built and continue to build is so, so inspiring. It really, really is.
Thank you very much. I do my best.
But sometimes you don't have time to sit and actually, because you're so in it and you're in the doing and you're in the building, that you don't have time to sit back and say, bloody hell,
No, because it's not a big deal.
No, but it is.
Maybe to other people.
Say that.
But it's like, okay, running a camera really well with lighting. I don't know how to do that.
And we're very thankful.
Yes.
For the cameras and the lighting.
Yes, we are. And it's like,
we should really say this.
yeah, that's a thing. I'm just good at my thing.
Yeah.
But it's like you probably don't think
And
it's
boy,
a
have you
big deal to be running cameras,
identified
right?
your thing. Some of us can go through life and not have found the thing that, you know.
Yeah.
And I was
But
watching
it's
something
curiosity.
the other day.
You have to fill the well. People get a bit lazy about filling the well. And if you read, right, you watch things, you think about things, you read stuff you don't care about. You constantly click on that one more link, click on one more link, click on one more link, read one more thing, read one more thing. There will always be.
Yeah.
You'll find your thing.
And I was actually watching something the other day, and it was, I can't remember the guy that was talking, but I was so
Wrapped.
drawn into him, and he really sparked something in me. And it actually said, I was talking about, and I was telling my daughter, and he was saying, people really look for their thing, and one thing they ask for advice on, I think he's a life coach, he says, what's my thing, what's my thing? I don't know what it is yet. How do I know? I'm trying everything and I'm enjoying this, but what is my thing? And actually sometimes you could have identified it so much earlier than you think. And actually your thing is the thing that comes easy to you, that's hard to most.
Yeah. It's
So,
your
like,
Venn diagram, right?
Exactly
of
that.
what you're
And
interested
is it my
in.
thing? But actually, the thing that is easy to you, but hard to most.
As long as long as you can make a living out of it.
Yes, but also it sparks that joy.
Yeah, because man,
You
when
know
it gets
that you've hit
hard,
it.
if you don't love it, it's not worth it.
Yes.
Yeah,
When
so
you're in
you
the
have to.
trenches, you need to love it.
There's a lot of trenches.
I want to do our rocket round now, which is essentially quick fire.
Okay.
Which is quite hard.
I'll probably be good at this.
For most females,
Okay.
I've discovered since
Okay,
taping this
okay, okay.
podcast. But if you can give quick fire answers, that's what we're looking for.
All right.
First question is, what do you believe are the non-negotiables for launching a business?
Ooh, don't buy it if you... No, sorry. Oh, don't sell it if you wouldn't buy it yourself.
Love it. There you go. When did you first realise that you truly launched? What was the moment that you thought, this is really happening?
Well, there was a time when Calvin Klein came for a facial with me, and it was at Bliss, and someone slipped a note under my door because that's how we told all the facialists when their next client was there by slipping a note under the door.
Right, okay.
And so I was, finishing up a facial, and someone slipped a note under my door that said, Calvin Klein is waiting for you. That felt like a bit of a launch.
That's a huge
I was like
moment.
26, and Calvin Klein is waiting for me.
Incredible.
Okay?
Yeah, that will do it.
It was good. It was good.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up and the last thing you do before you go to bed?
First thing I do a meditation. I actually, 4 days a week, I slap LED masks all over, like hands, neck, face.
Love it.
And then I put meditation in my ears, and I sit up and I do a morning meditation for gratitude and
Gorgeous.
love and all of that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which makes me in a good mood for the rest of the day. So I always feel like everything is possible. And that has become a real habit, and really helps so much, because you will come across stuff that you're dealing with. And wait, this isn't very quick fire. Next.
No, I love it. I love it.
Last thing I do in
before
the
you go to bed?
evening. What is the last thing I do before moisturize, of course.
There we go.
Yeah.
True to form.
Really, I take my Swiss anti-aging collagen youth balm cream and slather it all over my face and neck.
And that's why your skin looks the way it does, girl. What's a skill you'd love to learn?
Ooh, skydiving.
Oh,
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you wish someone had told you before you started your business? Any one of them.
You know it best.
That, I mean, so simple, but such brilliant advice.
Yeah.
Go with your gut. You know it best.
Gut instinct is actually data that you can't verbalize. That's the answer. It's not you know it best. It's that gut instinct is data that you can't yet verbalize. So I'm not going to tell you more because this is quick
Don't
fire.
elaborate. That was the best soundbite ever. That's that is a nugget right there. What would be a dream collab for your brand?
Which one?
Good question. I love this.
For FitFlop?
And what speaks to you the most? You know, we're seeing these like mega brand collabs now, and it's either like brand to brand or like
I'd actually love to put the FitFlop eye cushion flip flop in Uniqlo.
Ooh.
Because Uniqlo is like for everybody, right?
Yes.
They have so much good stuff. And like
And I could
everybody's wearing
kinda
Uniqlo
see
with
it.
Laura Piano. If, you know, you mix and match,
Yeah.
everybody has like low and high. But their stuff is so good.
Yeah.
And our shoes are so good. And I would love to be able to bring what was the lowly flip-flop with our ergonomics, which is the eye cushion, and give it to the entire world. And it would, through Uniqlo, you could do that.
Yeah, and I could see the branding as
Totally
well
cool.
working. Yeah,
Totally
love
cool.
it. And if you could choose one female figure as a mentor, past or present, who would it be?
God. I really like Jacinta Ardern.
Right.
She was the Prime Minister of New Zealand because she was a hard ass with a heart.
Ooh, that we love.
Yeah.
Hard ass with a heart.
Yeah, she was a hard ass with a heart.
Love it. And every episode, I ask our guests to leave sort of one tangible piece of advice that a listener, perhaps looking to emulate the journey that you've had, or has taken something and thought, do you know what, that is exactly what I want to do. How do I do it? And normally I sort of make it specific to, if you're a founder of a clothing brand, like people have left how to sort of
Cut
to
a pair of
suppliers,
trousers.
or however that might look. But throughout your journey, if there's one sort of tangible piece of advice that you could leave to a lady looking to launch, what would that be?
Oh, okay. Read everything. Listen to every podcast. Do your own homework. It's all available. All the advice is available. You know, Guy Raz started it, right? He like kick-started it with How I Built This. He's interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs. Your podcast interviews hundreds of entrepreneurs. The advice is there. You just have to listen to it and absorb it and believe it.
Yeah.
It's available to you and it's free.
And you just have to carve the time, don't you, to...
Well, it's prioritizing.
Exactly that.
Yeah,
Exactly
there
that.
is no free lunch. The Road Less Traveled said it beautifully, which is if you take this path, guess what? You can't do this. There's not going to be like binge watching of Netflix every night. If you actually want to learn stuff, you should be listening to podcasts and reading books about business. And you can't do both. You can't have everything. But you can have what you want if
Absolutely
you
that.
prioritize it.
Yeah, and take those resources. There are so many free resources. You're so right.
Yeah.
And lastly, we talk about ladies looking to launch, but if we're thinking of ladies who lunch,
Yes.
how do you spend your lunch hour every day? I love to know this question. It can be so niche and so varied. But what does a sort of typical lunch hour look like to you? Where are you?
Yeah.
And what are you eating?
There is no
There's
typical
no
lunch
typical-
hour.
Well, that we know.
Yeah, because I'll either be in a foreign country, or I might be at my home office, or I might be in the office in London. I might be at FitFlop. I might be at Beauty Pie. I generally will have a liquid lunch, but not the type that everybody thinks is fun.
Oh, damn.
I know.
It's like, really?
Yeah. Generally, I will like blend up a bunch of supplements into a smoothie and just either go for a walk with my weighted vest and like burn off steam, or I'll be at my desk reading stuff. Yeah, multitasking.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those good people who sits down with a knife and fork and chews. I know you're supposed to.
And takes the time. I know it's really
Yeah.
hard. I'm either one or the other. Like, I'll be like, right, okay, let's just stop and have lunch. Or, I mean, it just depends, doesn't it? It's so varied. Or we've got to work through this, and that's how a day looks.
Yeah, lunch is not a concept that I really pay that much attention to. It's just slows you down. It's like I'll kind of go from breakfast to dinner, and there's some kind of fuel in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But it's not
But you multitask, so you're getting your supplements in. You're trying to have get all the benefits at once.
Yeah. I always would have, I think I probably had like a proper lunch during a weekday 5 times.
Yeah.
In my life. If I had to go out with a journalist, or if I was meeting a supplier or something like that. But then like the afternoon is gone if you actually eat lunch.
Yeah.
It's done.
Well, you've missed everything else, haven't
Yeah, and
you?
then you have to digest, and digestion is like so tiring. So it's not,
Lunch on the go.
lunch on the go.
There we go.
Yeah.
I like it. Thank you so much. I have loved this conversation. I really, really have. It's been so nice to talk to you. And when you're so in the doing, you don't often have time to sit back and sort of take stock. But genuinely, it's so, so inspiring. So thank you for sharing everything with us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Ah. Don't forget to follow us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts to make sure that you don't miss out, because next time I'm going to be talking to another incredible lady who launched. If, like me, you're a watcher, then please follow us on YouTube and don't forget to like and subscribe.